Tensions in the Red Sea continue to escalate, and the circumstances and the situation in the sea and in the region are on the risk of spiraling completely out of control, which could get the United States sucked into yet another Middle Eastern war. Now, everything has really kind of blown up since the October 7th terrorist attack by Hamas against Israel. And now then their response since that time has just set a whole series of things in the region, escalating even further up. And we've already had lots of issues, literally over 100 strikes against American forces in the region, in Iraq and in Syria, at a number of our bases there. Some of our troops have already been injured, and that there's already a risk that we could escalate and get involved with that, especially if it turns out that Iran is behind any of those attacks. And some of their groups definitely have been. And if any of our American troops are killed, as we've talked about on several of our previous episodes here, you know, the chance that we could get drawn into a larger war by having to attack Iran will go up through the roof. But it's the issue in the Red Sea, which is the most critical, and it's right now is the most sensitive and volatile situation, which could spark a jump into the next phase, or a drop, if you want to look at it more appropriately, into the next possibility of getting us drawn into a war. Now, as you may have heard, especially I think since the 17th or so of October, the Houthi rebels, who possess much of Yemen, have been attacking ships in the Red Sea in support of the Palestinian people and in support of the Hamas group that's fighting against Israel. And so they want to gum up the trade routes that run through the Red Sea and through the Suez Canal, because they think that's going to bring pressure on other nations outside of the world against Israel, to maybe put a pressure on to end the war, or to bring more in supplies into the Palestinian people, which is one of their stated objectives. Just to kind of give you paint a picture here, so you see what's at stake and really what's going on with this. First of all, let's show you a bit of a Sky News clip that shows what the region is going on and what's actually at stake right here.
90% of the traffic this time last year has disappeared. Only 10% is now going through. And the reason that this matters is because this is the route. If you're taking something, say, from Shanghai to Rotterdam, instead of going through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal and the Mediterranean, ships now have to reroute all the way around the Cape of Good Hope, and that's twice the distance. And the cost, I've been looking at some container costs, the cost of getting a container from Shanghai to Rotterdam was about $1,500. This week, it's over $3,500. Right. And in some cases, it's $4,000. So shipping costs have more than doubled in the last couple of months. And that's why it's doing so much damage. 10% of the world's oil goes through there. So the Red Sea, its route to the Suez Canal, is critical. And the Houthis, by, as it were, creating this bottleneck, are certainly affecting world trade.
Now, anytime you talk about interdicting world trade, and I think some estimates say up to a sixth of all global trade has to go through the Red Sea there to get up through the Suez, or they have to make that big route beyond the end of that, which drives up cost. And then, of course, that always gets passed on to customers, and it's just something that no nation likes to have to deal with. So there's lots of pressure. Always seems to come back to the United States that you guys need to fix this. And so also on Sky News, there was a couple of their experts were talking about some options that may exist to try to deal with this.
The Houthis can get drones from anywhere in the region, but they can't get ballistic missiles. They're just not available on the open market. They've come from Iran. Iran, of course, funds Hezbollah, funds Hamas, and funds the Houthis, and it wants to put pressure, escalate in the region, puts pressure on the America to bring the conflict between Israel. So a series of calibrated strikes against Iran could be an option on the table, but as you and I both know, that would carry grave risks of an escalation. Yeah. But there does appear to be a limit to how many other diplomatic options you've got available if you want to keep trade flowing around the arterial routes around the world.
Now, if there's any doubt that whether or not that message is being received in the United States, that there is a critical issue here that must be dealt with militarily as opposed to diplomatically. We're going to touch on that in just a second. But here is what just yesterday, or on the 10th, rather, of January, both Secretary of State Blinken and John Kirby had to say about this. We'll start first with Blinken.
We've been clear with more than 20 other countries that if this continues, as it did yesterday, there will be consequences. There'll be consequences for the Houthis' actions. We've also repeatedly tried to make clear to Iran as other countries have as well, that the support that they're providing to the Houthis, including for these actions, needs to stop. It's not in their interest to see the conflict escalated, and we're not the only ones who sent that message to Iran.
Not only the United States, but apparently, actually, we heard just recently, like just hours ago, that Britain apparently is getting ready to make a speech. And I don't know by the time you hear this if that will have already happened, but apparently Rishi Sunak is also considering bringing Britain in to help attack either Houthi or Iranian targets. It's been unspecific what he's talking about so far, but people keep talking about it. And the way he put that there, Blinken, it really starts to sound like one of those George Bush-esque kind of your last warning before we take action kind of situations. And if there was any doubt about that, John Kirby, also on the same day, made a similar kind of threat.
These attacks against vessels in the Red Sea pose a direct threat to lives, to freedom of navigation, and to global trade in one of the world's most critical waterways. And despite what the Houthis may say, they are threatening and targeting commercial vessels with ties to countries all over the world, many of which have no connection to Israel whatsoever. These attacks are unlawful, they're reckless, and they are escalatory. We've warned them. We put ships in the Red Sea. They've got a choice to make, and the right choice is to stop these attacks. And as I said again, I'll say it 3 times now, they'll bear the consequences for failure to do so.
So you see, he's emphasizing there, just like Blinken was emphasizing in his press conference, the last warning basically has been given here. Kirby, for the 3rd time, I'm going to say they will bear the consequences of what happens. We have shipping with military power in the region. It's sitting there right now. And, if they're smart, they won't do it. But if there's another attack, then the expectation is that this time something's going to happen. Now, as that first clip showed you there from the Sky News, it's a legit, no kidding, it's a problem for global trade right now, because either the carriers have to go through the Red Sea, risk not getting attacked. And there was another big one just yesterday. I believe up to 12 different attacks were made. All of which were intercepted, but still the attacks continue on there. The implication being that now that if there's an additional tax, that some of the talk is that it's not just going to be intercepting the missiles, but that they're going to go after the launch sites in Yemen. That seems to be the general understanding that many of the experts have had, and that seems to be the most plausible. And then the question is going to be, will it stop there? What if they attack the sites in Yemen? Will they also attack sites in what they say is their minders in Tehran, in Iran? Because there's no shortage of people that are wanting to, in the United States, that are wanting to do that. Some are actually chomping at the bit, hoping they get a chance to do it. There's people in Israel that would love nothing more for the United States to go after Iran because it's their enemy. And anytime it seems that anyone can get the U.S. military to do their job and to fight their battles for them and to provide protection for them, they're totally good with that. And look, and that really raises one of the points I want to make in this video here. It is not the United States' responsibility and obligation to keep everything open all the time while no one else does anything. That's one of the first points I want to make here. There are other ways to handle this besides just the U.S. bringing in firepower and blowing stuff up and killing people. Because number one, let's look at the first of it. Let's examine that part first. Will that work? If we come in and hit the launch sites and take out the radar sites and some of the other things that are likely targets, if we go after the Houthis in Yemen, will that free up the coast? The almost certain answer is no. Look, we always want to say, you just got to hit them hard. The only language they understand is force. So you got to punch them hard and then they'll back down. That's what you want. It almost never works out that way. Nearly any kind of example you want to see in the Middle East, anytime you use force, the reflexive response is more force in the other direction. There's a retaliation. There's a response. There's more coming. Even in some people want to claim that after the U.S. assassinated General Soleimani 4 years ago, that Iran did nothing. They backed down. That's not true. That's fundamentally, practically untrue. And as a matter of fact, they launched a massive missile strike against a U.S. base, blew up all kinds of facilities, injured 100 Americans, and we did nothing in the aftermath. You realize that? Most people don't remember that part of the story. Our base was shattered, and we did nothing afterwards. So you could make an argument who was deterred. Not really sure about that. But even if you want to say about the Iranian-backed groups' attacks after that, they continued on. We had hundreds of them. I'm sorry, scores of them. Many, many, many altogether over the years. Even before this big surge started on October 17th, they had been periodically going to. They were never deterred. We just got lucky in that our defenses intercepted the missiles and the rockets and the bombs, and it didn't kill any Americans. But a lot of that, as we've talked about in previous deep dives here, was just luck. And that's according to the men who lived through it. So let that sink in there. But so the first point here is, if you think that's going to, using military force and blowing up some stuff in Yemen is going to keep the Red Sea open, and you're going to be sadly mistaken. As a matter of fact, Yemen leaders have already publicly stated, if the U.S. attacks into Yemen, they will now target American assets in the region. They said, we aren't right now. We're not going to, and we don't want to. Our interest is in to bring help and aid to the Palestinian people who are being killed in the Gaza Strip. That's their stated objective. They're not even saying anything really hard, like end the war or anything like that. But if we attack them, then they're saying, then they're going to retaliate against American forces. And why does anybody think they wouldn't do that? Why does anyone think that because you blow something up, that's going to be the end of the show? Look, all you got to do is pay a little bit of attention to the Houthi rebels that have been fighting in Yemen since 2014, 2013. Since 2015, they've been fighting a war with Saudi Arabia, which we had helped provide a lot of firepower, intelligence, refuel support, etc. And so for all those years since 2015, Saudi Arabia was unable to cow them, was unable to shut them down, no matter how much extraordinary firepower they had from all the modern weapons and missiles and everything else like that they have. The Houthis were never cowed. They continued to fight. They always struck back. Now, why in God's name does anybody think that firing a couple of missiles by the United States into Yemen is going to have a different result? I mean, why? It just boggles my mind when people just want to say, yeah, you do this and then they'll understand. No, my friend, they won't. We'll find out the hard way, like we have so many times in the Middle East in the last 2 or 3 decades, that when you do this, all you do is bring fire back in the other direction. It just doesn't work. Well, what could work? What could we do instead? Well, number one, we could do something that's almost turned into a dirty word these days, which is an embarrassment to us. And that is, we could try diplomacy. We could say, hey, look, what do we have to do here to keep this waterway open here? Now, I know that's condescending to us to have to bring ourselves to their level, to actually talk to them as someone, a negotiating partner, listen to them and come out with something that they want, something that we want. But that is wisdom, my friend. That is wisdom. Consider, you do what's being threatened here, what we showed you our senior leaders are thinking about doing, and you fire a bunch of missiles into Yemen, almost certainly you're going to get more violence in return. I just think that's a given. I would be shocked beyond belief if they suddenly folded their tent and went home, because they've never done it before, so they won't do it now. But if you go in with some kind of negotiation and say, what can we do here? Maybe let's give more aid to the Palestinian people. Let's take care of the people and more. Will that satisfy them? Maybe it will. Maybe there's a 5% chance, maybe a 10% chance, maybe no more than that. They might not do it. Okay, well, at least you tried that, because if you can solve a problem at the lowest level, at the lowest cost, and get that Red Sea open, and you don't have to have the risk of having more violence come against you, is that not an obvious win? Why would you not even want to try it? That's the first thing that we should do. The second thing is that, look, the whole point of friction in this whole thing that's caused this whole region to explode is obviously the war against Hamas and between Israel and Hamas. So we should do everything in our power, as I've talked about many times for many reasons. We should do everything to help bring that war to an end. Anything that can stop the fighting and stop the risk of escalation, whether that's in the north with Hezbollah, whether that's potential with Iran, whether that's other actors in the region who want to continue to fight against Israel. If we can bring that war to an end and lower the tensions and lower the reasons why anyone wants to fight, and in a way that can bring security and peace to Israel and peace and finally end the dying for the Palestinians, man, that should be job number one. That should have to supersede all of these. That's what we should be seeking for, using every diplomatic leverage we can to end the war. And that means probably putting some pressure on the Israeli government and making some of our aid contingent on some of those. Because, my friend, we have bigger issues than just doing whatever Israel wants in that area. We have our own national security interests, which must predominate. And if we're going to help our friend that we've had for decades, there's so many great things about Israel, so many great things about the Israeli people who live there, both Arabs and Jews. And I want that area to have peace above anyone. I do, but genuine peace, something that can be sustained. But just trying to kill your way to peace is not going to work. And as long as we say, here's our aid, do whatever you want with it, and we would like it if you do this, but there's no strings, then they're not going to listen to us, as they haven't so far. Actions speak louder than words. So that's the second thing we could do, is we could put some diplomatic pressure on all the parties, and certainly not just saying Tel Aviv, but including Tel Aviv, to get this thing done. And let's use every diplomatic lever we have to try to bring this war to an end for all involved here. But the third thing is, I touched on this a second ago. Why is it that the United States should be expected to be the ones to bring lethal power and to risk having all the fire come back on them? If this is truly a global issue, and it definitely is, there are, I believe I've heard upwards of 40 nations that have been affected by a lot of these attacks so far. Their vessels have been attacked, their assets have been attacked, and definitely all these nations around the world have a lot to lose economically if the cost of shipping goes up through there for all kinds of goods. And you're talking China, all throughout the Middle East, Africa. I mean, literally every country, every region of the world. So everybody who has a stake in it, they should be the ones that are there too. Now, this so-called 20-member alliance that we have, this naval alliance, which is really probably 2 or 3 countries with actual naval assets in there. So we're taking all of the risks. Now, explain to me why the U.S. has to take all of the expense to take military action and risk all of the wrath on the other side, while all these other countries in the region and in the world benefit from it. Why is that? Why is that like not even considered that, hey, all these other countries that are hurting because of the economic impact should also step up and put some skin in the game? I don't think that it's so-called American leadership to say, yeah, y'all just sit back on the side and benefit from everything I do, pay nothing, and we'll go and do all the hard work. And we'll take the risk of military action coming back against our own assets and our own people. I think that's nonsense. I'm adamantly opposed to that. It is time for us to start changing that dynamic and saying we can provide leadership, but I'm telling you, leadership as I define it says that we're going to rally people around together who were affected by this so that everybody who's got skin in the game also has risk in the game. And if you want to benefit from it, then you're going to have to actually pony up something as well. It's not just going to be the United States, because frankly, all that does is continue to foster this attitude that the Americans are going to do it. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to spend a lot of money on my own defense because y'all are going to handle it for us. Y'all are going to take the hits that come in there. I'm just going to sit back and take the financial windfall. And I'm saying, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that should be the case anymore. We should spread the wealth when it comes to everybody paying their fair share, everybody doing their fair share, everybody having their ability to risk. And I'm telling you what, if other people have to put some hard skin in the game and take some risk, there'll be a lot more interest in finding a negotiated settlement, because it is really easy for somebody who doesn't take any risk to say, yeah, launch a few missiles. Maybe it'll work, because if it doesn't, there won't be any missiles coming back on them. It'll be coming back on us. It'll be your sons and your daughters and your warships and your planes that are going to be potential targets in this, especially if this thing continues to disintegrate and we fall into a war. Folks, that is not in American national interest, and it is time we recognize the reality of that and start making some changes in how we do business. The bottom line is supposed to be to protect America, to protect our ability to prosper financially, and to make our people safe and free, both at home and abroad. That's what we need to be doing. And let's stop with this reflexive throwing a bunch of missiles at everybody we don't like. It never works. And that is your deep dive for today. Thanks for listening. We ask you to like and subscribe and join us on our next episode, because we are going to continue to track this situation. It's definitely not going away. And as the information breaks, you can count on coming here to get your best analysis. Thanks, and we'll see you next time on Deep Dive.